Kelvin, good to see you. Obviously, here to talk about the news that supporters will be on the board. What's brought you to that decision? We'll go through the kind of intricacies and the process, etc. in a second, but just the general idea of it. What's brought you to do that?
Well, we've been talking about the board structure for a while now, as the three of us, and we talked about expanding that, and we talked about James. As you'll see, we're going to add James to the board as well. But then we looked at okay, what else can we do? And the supporter representative has always been a conversation and a discussion, and we just think it's a good time. I think there's a lot going on in football right now in terms of what happens in the future, and I think there are some changes coming in terms of regulation, independent regulator, in terms of potentially, hopefully, a different financial distribution model, and looking at ways the clubs, especially at our level, to be maybe more sustainable and less owner funded. So we just thought it was a good time now to, and obviously the Tracy Couch fan-led review is imminent, and so we looked at that and we thought, why not try and get a little bit ahead of the curve, and in terms of for us, and put an elected member from the fan base on the board to probably help us navigate through some of those matters as they come up. And so really that was really a lot of the thinking behind it, and it's just been a discussion with different organisations, different clubs as we go along. I've been talking to Fair Game, which is a collection of clubs that have got together to talk about some of these matters a little bit more, and I've had good conversations with them. We're going to talk to them again once we have the fan representative on the board, and how we go forward.
You mentioned there obviously the report that came out recently. We've seen clubs in difficulty, and there's relationships between the fans and the owners, and I suppose the key message, and you've talked about this before, is transparency, isn't it? And this is what it's about in a way as well. Supporters being transparent, and the supporter in the boardroom seeing how decisions are made, and being part of that is only good for the health of the club.
Well, I think we've done quite a lot in terms of that. Obviously, we're going to every club gets criticised about not being transparent, but you always talk about, especially when it comes to like transfer fees and things like that. And I've talked around the reasons for that, and this isn't about getting transfer fees out to the fan base through a representative, but in terms of we've actually improved our level of financial transparency with our what we record at Companies House in terms of our account. So it is important to us, and we talked about it, and we said we actually don't have anything to hide, so why wouldn't we be able to improve that level of transparency and talk about some of the matters, and obviously there's always going to be some sort of commercial confidentiality, and any board member, even whether supporter or not, or independent, would understand that. But overall, we think it's a step forward. The process that James and Gareth and the club will put in place will ensure an independent process, and that's also very important. That it's an elected member and it's someone to represent the fans and to help communicate and help that two-way back and forth.
Yeah, just on that point, just to go on that point a bit, important to make that distinction. Obviously, it's an independent. How if you're a Cobblers fan who wants to be on the board, who's got these strong opinions, who wants to talk with you, etc., how do they go about being elected? How do they go about being represented? How can they do it?
Well, you know me, I'm not the detail guy, so I think the best thing is once this gets released, I think the detail will be on the website. And I think what we talked about is, especially from an existing board perspective, we didn't want to be overly involved in the process. We think it's a good step forward, but we've got no preconceived ideas how it's even going to work. Really, we want to, but we definitely haven't got a preconceived idea, in terms of how that person gets elected, who that person is, what type of fan they are, whether they're, the only stipulation I think I said that we need to put on is that they need to be nominated and seconded by season ticket holders. We need to make sure that there is a danger with some of these things that other fans jump on and try and vote or things like that. So there will be processes in place to ensure that every Northampton fan has an opportunity to vote, but it is just Northampton Town fans. But we don't know. We have we don't. I don't want to say we don't care, but we don't know who that person's going to be, so we don't really care who that person is, because they are going to be elected by the fan base, and it is a majority rule type thing. So we don't mind if they're season ticket holders. What would we like? Obviously, I think to represent the fan base, we would like somebody who's involved in a lot of what happens at the fan base. We'd like, somebody who goes to games home and away, and we're not saying every game. We'd like somebody who maybe knows a little bit about the community, maybe who's involved as a parent. Any of that stuff is a positive, but not essential. So it's really about who feels they can bring something to the table, because we're going to lean on that person to go out to go out with the fan base. Do we want somebody local? Do we want somebody that lives out of the area? Preferably probably local, but again, we're not dictating that. So it's a moot point for us. It's whoever puts themselves forward, whoever puts a good enough case forward, and whoever the fan base want to vote for.
And you touched on it there. Important to note, it's not a symbolic seat at the table. It's a role that means they will have influence and be able to have discussions and do things.
Oh yeah, we want someone that's going to be involved. Absolutely. We don't want. This isn't just us saying we're going to have a supporter on the board. This is someone that we want to include in conversation for sure. It's like anything else. Everyone on the board will have a vote, and it'll be one of five, or even if it would have been one of four, it's still that's not the important part for us. The important part for us is there is that input, involvement, and we want somebody who can attend board meetings, obviously, and via Zoom or whether they're in person, etc. And that's important to us. It's definitely not someone we just want there. We want someone that feels like they can influence it. And the truth is, do I think it changes much dramatically? I actually don't, because I don't think we are out of touch with our fan base. I don't think we necessarily don't communicate with our fan base in general. But will it help us, and will it help that get our message back out to the fan? Yeah, I think it will absolutely help, and that's what we want that person to do. And we're not looking for that person to change themselves as a fan. I think I'd prefer them not to come into the boardroom every game and suddenly become a suited, not that we're suited and booted ourselves, but not to become we're pretty relaxed boardroom anyway. But I don't necessarily want them to become a board member in terms of come into the board for every match. I want them still to be a fan, because I want them to be out there, talking to the fan base and interacting with the fan base just like they normally would, because the person that the fan base is going to vote for is the person that is already connected to the fans, and therefore we don't want to lose that connection. We want that connection to survive.
Final point on this, and just going back to what you mentioned right at the beginning about James Whiting and him going onto the board as well, will that change his day-to-day role with the club, or is this just another added responsibility?
No, I just think it's a natural progression for James. James is he's a local lad, lives in the area, young family, and James was up here before us and was involved in, or was part of seeing what happened before, and I think he's done exceptionally well, and he's grown quite a bit in the role of chief exec. He was only a chief exec for a few months before we took over. And we kept him in that role, and there was some conversation at that time about what we did, whether we brought in a chief exec or not. But we felt that James was capable, and he's definitely proved that. He's an absolutely loyal servant to the club. And what we like about James coming on, and James to us, is seen as a longer term appointment in terms of the role on the board. And he's that local representative almost, that in a board capacity, James, we're all custodians of the club in our own way, but as owners, you're definitely custodians of a club, and James would probably outlive us. So if James is in that role, I like that. We like that sort of medium, longer term view of that, and none of this is really about the short term. This is about because I think as a club we're pretty strong right now in terms of just start of the season's good, but the structure of the club is quite powerful right now. I believe in terms of the people that are around, from the football staff to the club staff to the community work that we're doing, all that kind of stuff. So I think this is we think it's a really good time to strengthen, and I think that's what we're doing with these moves.
On the fan being elected to the board then, Kelvin, of course in the past the Supporters Trust has had a seat on the board, it's at other clubs as well, but you've opened it up wider this time. Why have you done that and not gone straight to the Supporters Trust for a member?
I think, again, this was something we discussed at the time, and I we actually, I think it's commonly known that we've never had a Supporters Trust representative on the board. That was prior to us taking over the club, and at the time it was discussed with the council. And we didn't feel comfortable at the time that we knew everybody, all the players in the club, in terms of who were the organisations that were respected, etc., etc. So we just felt it was better to go alone at that point, and we still felt that was the right decision. So then we come to this time now where we think it's a good time to have a representative, but we did feel that we can't shy away from the fact that, especially in the last couple of months, we've had some challenges now in our relationship with the trust, and one of the things that was very important to us, and we actually feel that's not necessarily from us at this point, because we've offered Zoom meetings and things like that, and so it's very hard to build a relationship when an organisation doesn't want to have a conversation. So but we do, we obviously take some responsibility in that. But what we felt from this position, it wasn't about. We felt that we don't want to dictate who is on the board. So if we went to the Supporters Trust, we would then be dictating who was on the board in a smaller group, or in a larger group, should we say, in terms of and obviously and in the Chronicle, in the recent poll, it only showed they represented 6% of the fan base, or the fan base felt that only 6%. They represented 6% of the fan base that represented their views, the Supporters Trust. So automatically you'd almost be alienating 94% of the fan base. So we thought it was a better approach, and talking to other clubs, because there's clubs with trust members on the board, there's clubs with run majority by their trust, and there's also clubs with no representation, and there's clubs with independent representation for fans. So there's a whole spectrum of people, and we just felt this was a chance for the fans who, whether they like the Supporters Trust, they don't like the Supporters Trust, to be represented. So this was the fairest way of doing it in our opinion. And listen, as we've said, we have no issue with who comes on, and if they're a member of the Supporters Trust, then we have no issue with that whatsoever, and we welcome whoever's on, but we welcome them with the view that it's an independent supporter that's been democratically voted on by the rest of the fan base. So we don't actually have any, we have had communication issues or disagreements maybe with the trust in the past, but a lot of that is noise for us. We're always going to have people that disagree with the way that we think and what we do, but one thing that can't happen in this situation is this. We can't be accused of it not being an independent process or lacking transparency, because here it is. It's an independent process. It's a democratic process, and whoever gets the most votes, it comes on the board. So this isn't about any particular group. It's not about the trust. It's not about the disability group. It's not about any of the travel clubs. It's not about the community. This is about the club as a whole and what's in the best interest of the football club, and looking at the whole of the club rather than just small pockets of it. And including ourselves as a board, this is about, because we're just a small pocket and everyone else is a small pocket around that. This is about the overall club and how do we get stronger going forward.
And just to reiterate a point that you made, you've had your clashes in the last couple of months with the Supporters Trust, and this is an independent process. If it was a trust member that was to be elected, obviously independent process, no problem with it.
No, not at all. Absolutely not. We welcome whoever the supporters feel is the right person for the job. And I think it is a bold step. We accept the risk that somebody coming on the board hates us, but we like that challenge. If I equate it to the recruitment committee, that we've put in place, and that's probably some of the reasons why we like what we're looking to do now with this ball position. The recruitment committee isn't about people dictating what happens. The recruitment, because John does a lot of the work, Martin does a lot of the work in terms of bringing players, but we challenge. You know, there's Graham challenging. Is that right? Is that the person? What about this? What about that? And that's important to any sort of board structure. So that's what we want. We want someone to challenge us and say, can we do this? Can we do this better? So if that's somebody, you know, we don't have to all get along. It helps to everyone, you know, we'll all obviously always be respectful, but we want that challenge, and that's the important part.
Aside from the off the field, on the pitch then, just finally, I know you've been at the last few games home and away, watching from afar at the beginning of the season. What have you made of it?
I think it's been a good start. I was actually here for the start of the season as well, so I think I've seen 7 or so, 8 games this season so far, and I much prefer being here watching them. I have to say, watching at home on a TV is not the most, on your own is not the most.
You get some great commentary there.
Well, yeah, you do. You do. Yeah, I tend to listen to the away commentary. No, it's been decent. Gareth's pretty good on there. I've listened to Gareth a couple of times, but in fairness, I think the start's been good. It's really difficult to gel a team. We've always seen that. It's difficult to gel a coaching staff, a recruitment committee. We implemented a lot of different things at the start of this season. But I think as a club we've recruited well. I think we've been a bit unlucky with Joe and Sid going down injured like they did, and longer term injuries. That's always a challenge. But I think been good. I think defensively we've been excellent. I think there's a lot of work going on right now with the coaching staff in terms of and discussion around the transition then from being a very, very solid unit to scoring a few more goals, and I think that's recognised, and I think I just think Saturday was and I'm really pleased I was here Saturday, because I just thought it was a really good atmosphere. It was a really good game. I thought it was entertaining. I thought we were unlucky with a couple of decisions. We were probably lucky with a couple of things that happened, and I thought we were at times on the ascendancy, and we could have easily. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if we'd have walked away winning that game. So. I think we're happy with the start, but it is just that. It's just the start, and John and everybody knows, and that we've got to keep that going.
Good stuff. Thank you very much.